Welcome to the AUA Inside Track podcast. Today's Inside Track podcast is brought to you by the Residents and Fellows Committee and was originally presented during the Residents Forum program at AUA2022 in New Orleans. Panel moderator Dr. Mayad Mavasagi is joined by Drs. Justin Dubin, Matthew Nielsen, Courtney Rowe, and Jair Santiago-Lastra for a discussion on social media do's and don'ts.
Hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for the social media session and for the entire session. It's my pleasure to be serving as the moderator for this panel discussion on social media. I'd like to just briefly start off by introducing our panelists. I'm sure they're very well known to everyone, but first we have Dr. Justin Dubin, current andrology fellow at Northwestern, going to be practicing in Florida after, and probably well known to many of you for his podcast efforts, The Man Up, where he brings on guests and talks about men's sexual health related content. So thank you, Dr. Dubin, for being here. Dr. Matthew Nielsen, professor and chair of Department of Urology at the University of North Carolina, actively engaged in quality improvement and patient safety initiatives, previous chair-elect, and now the chair of the Science and Quality Council for the AUA. So congrats, Dr. Nielsen, and thank you for being with us. Dr. Courtney Rowe, a pediatric urologist at UConn, Connecticut Children's, director of the Recon Urology Program and co-director of the Connecticut Children's Continence Program. A huge interest in media, and she's done an incredible Don't Freak Out series for her patients and families, video series. So if you get a chance to check that out if you haven't. Dr. Ashley Winter is not here with us today, and we're very gracious and delighted to welcome Dr. Santiago from UCSD. She's Associate Professor of Urology, Director of the Women Pelvic Center there, and a member of the AUA Diversity and Inclusion Task Force that's been initiated, an incredible initiative over the past couple years. So thank you all for being here. We'll just get right to it. And most of these questions are it's open. I'll direct them, but if you guys have anything to add on, please feel free. You all have found incredible ways to use social media to propagate information, to educate, to share content, and you've done a lot of good. Unfortunately, out there, you can use social media for bad. And we wanted to cover a lot of that and take a deeper dive into the dangers of social media. So Dr. Dubin, I'll start with you. Misinformation, disinformation that's out there. And kind of wanted to get all of your opinions, but we'll start with you, Dr. Dubin. What do you do, if anything, if it's directed at you, your post, if you encounter misinformation or even to the extent of disinformation on social media?
Thank you, and thank you guys. This is such an honor to be with all of you guys. You're all amazing, so this is really cool. Thank you for having us today. I think the rule for most misinformation is just don't feed the trolls. It's very simple. People are combating you online because they want to have a voice, and when you often respond to them or acknowledge them, you're giving them that platform, you're giving them that voice. That's the majority of the situation. However, I think there are situations that you need to be aware of. Say you're on a topic, something like, COVID and men's health, and people continuously are messaging you the same thought, same misinformation. I think it's good to maybe select someone, maybe respond in kind, thoughtful response with validated information, using things like the Urology Care Foundation. We need to continue to promote and use that educational tool. And you provide some context for why they're wrong, as long as there's a general consensus that that's continuously being a problem. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I would say just kind of ignore. That's my thoughts.
Sure. Any other comments, suggestions, tips for us?
I think in pediatric urology, we are in an interesting place where we have a lot of interactions with advocate groups whose voices have been silenced in the past. And I think we've all had to decide what our own personal policy on trolling is. Because I think in our world, sometimes it's, I think there may be trolls who want to be trolls, but there also may be people who are upset and angry for good reasons. And I have my own personal blocking cutoffs. But I also think that sometimes these people are reaching out and speaking out because they're afraid. And I think that maybe direct engagement with them is not always the right policy, but in some ways we have this unique opportunity for them to hear a different set of voices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we've covered the trolling from more of a general public standpoint. We recently, and I'll direct this question to you, Dr. Nielsen, there are members of the academic community who were found to be bullying or attacking other members of the academic community. So when you're encountering those specific situations, how would you deal with, recommend, other members of the academic community to deal with when it's someone, your peer or someone, superior to you?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that the online sort of medium has its limitations, and I don't, can't say a specific example, but I think a scenario like that, it may be helpful to, if you're in a position that is, in the sort of hierarchy, where someone's senior or, in a position of authority, looping in some adult supervision that may be more on a peer level to try to, kind of talk to someone online and help them even just appreciate that, it may not be, assume good intentions even, they may not even appreciate that that's the way it's coming across, and often sort of taking it offline and being able to sort of have some, closure of the loop, I think could be helpful. In some cases, I think there also has to be something that is more visible to the public, but maybe starting with some level of engagement, potentially with adult supervision is helpful. And I use adult supervision all the time, so so I don't mean that to just say older people, but it's I think that sometimes starting taking it out of the online forum to be able to kind of get a sense of what's going on and help whoever is involved appreciate the way that they're coming across, which they may just not appreciate or understand. Right.
Yeah, I think things can cascade very quickly if you don't take a step back and try to involve other people. I guess, Dr. Santiago, this is just a question that, if you don't mind, are there guidelines for social media use for us that you're aware of? And outside of that, are there institutional specific guidelines at your institution that you are familiar with and work with?
So absolutely, there are guidelines. So the Federation of State Medical Boards actually has a social media policy about what is appropriate for physicians who are licensed to practice medicine in any of the 50 states and territories. And they have some very specific do's and don'ts. Obviously, sharing patient information is always like a definite no-no. And you have to be really careful, because even if you share, for example, pictures from the OR that you don't think would necessarily identify a patient, if you're talking about a case you did on a specific day and you're like celebrating how well it went and the patient identifies that that's a case that took place and they can identify themselves, that would probably qualify, and it can get you into a little bit of trouble. And then additionally, your institution is definitely going to have some kind of social media policy. I would say that institutions, it really varies as far as like how well versed they are in social media and how they approach it. So it's always a good idea, if you are expanding your social media reach and platform, to check in with them and make sure that the things that you're posting and what you're deciding is your quote-unquote brand is something that your institution can get behind and support. Because what happens sometimes, and it's happened to me twice, where a comment that someone's made or that I've made has caught on to the patient advocacy trolls or has been misconstrued. And it's really been wonderful that my institution has known how to kind of guide me through that situation and help me navigate that uncomfortable process, because it's often very unfair and it can feel like the trolling is not going to stop. It eventually does stop and they move on to something else. But having your institution have your back is really important, and making sure you understand that what you post, it may be just your opinion and not your institution's, but they still have policies and you're beholden to them.
Sure. Yeah.
That was an excellent explanation. I do, just for the residents, I want them to know the data shows 65% of residents are not aware of guidelines. So do yourself a favor, go on to the AUA, EAU, Stacy Loeb and Jake Taylor have a guidelines of guidelines on PubMed. You can go find it. I think it's British Journal of Urology. So really good data out there. that, we know that you guys aren't reading it. No one's reading it. So just make sure you're reading it. And then institutionally, only about 17% of, trainees and attendings have ever gotten guidance from their institutions. It's one of these things where you're okay until you're not, right? So you only know you cross the line when you do. So it's always important when you're starting a job or when you're establishing yourself, especially during residency. Maybe it's a good time to ask your program director, hey, maybe we can have a talk with what you guys like, what you guys don't like, what you are okay with us putting out there, because the last thing you want to do is hear it from the higher ups because you didn't know how far you could go until you went there.
Yeah, and at that point it could be too late. And I think it's pretty amazing, and I can't speak for everyone, but I have seen an incredibly large amount of intraoperative photos on Twitter, and I don't know if they go through a particular policy to get them published, but I've heard of and witnessed witnessed experiences close enough to me where that has gotten them into so much trouble. I don't know if there's safe ways other than you all mentioning speak to your institutional specific individuals to post pictures, but it is pretty remarkable how much of that is being shared. Dr. Rowe, in terms of you have your YouTube channel, on social media. You have a lot of families who are very interested in the content. How do you deal with, your patients, family members following you, friending you, sending you private messages when it gets very personal to that extent? How would you kind of give us advice when it gets to the point where they're trying to create that extra level of contact that can get?
So I have two separate social media lives that are completely disconnected. So I have my personal accounts, which have absolutely no identifier. I use my husband's last name on them, and I don't even use my first name. And then I have my professional accounts, and so they're completely separate. So it's been very easy for me to just sort of cut it off.
Yeah.
If someone is engaging with me on a personal level on a professional account, I just don't engage that way. Okay. So that's been fairly simple.
Anyone else have like personal experiences with people reaching out to them and it just the type of questions they're getting is a little bit uncomfortable? Or,
I think if you're really someone who wants to create a social media platform that leverages beyond a couple thousand followers, it is going to require some involvement of your personal life. You want to show some of yourself because that really helps people engage with you. So it is something each one of us decides that for themselves. How much of you are you going to share on social media? That said, your patients can follow you on social media if you are open to just publicly having followers. But certain social media types, for example, like Facebook or a personal Facebook account, or direct messaging with a patient, or having a social interaction with a patient, that can be a very slippery slope, and I urge you to tread cautiously with that. And the reason for that is that if you have personal relationships with your patients outside of your medical practice, that can come into play with your licensing. And so you have to be really careful, because you do need to show some of yourself, again, if you want that to grow. And basically, social media can be so incredibly powerful for your practice and for your brand and just for engaging with other opinion leaders in your field. But you always have to check in with yourself and see kind of what is the limit of what I'm wanting to go through, and making sure that it never violates that professional boundary. And it requires multiple check-ins with yourself to make sure that you're not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you want to create this boundary, and now you become a, somewhat spokesperson for your institution, and you see all these people and their taglines, RT doesn't equal endorsement. Does that even, and maybe I can address this to you, Dr. Nielsen, does that mean anything from a legal standpoint if one of your, faculty members decides to, express their opinion on social media, and it's somewhat reflective of, them being a potential spokesperson for UNC, and yeah, they save themselves by saying, hey, look, whatever I say is my own.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the retweet doesn't equal endorsement. I think that doesn't sort of shield you from everything. And I mean, for our institution, we have policies that are beyond social media, that are, like people can't engage in political activity using their UNC email. It's not your email. It has your name on it, but that's the company's email. And
right.
so it's, I think those things are not necessarily specific to social media, but social media is, a huge Pandora's box for ways that can, that can do other things. So I think, having the RT doesn't equal E isn't your Kevlar. And I think you just have to be, really cautious about, sort of where you draw the line on things. And I think it's blurry. I mean, policies are often very vague and nebulous, and just because something's not a written policy doesn't mean that there couldn't be consequences from it. So I think, so my mom follows me on social media, number one. Everyone's mom follows them, right? So my hi mom, and the CEO of our healthcare system follows me.
Right.
So I think just as a generality, what I would just sort of the pearl that I would give with everyone is, whether it's a text, whether it's an email, whether it's a sort of secure chat on Epic or everything, anything electronic is forever. And just whatever in the heat of the moment, when you're tired post-call, whatever, if you put something in an email, you put something in a text, you put something in a post.
It's there forever.
It's there, and just picture whatever you're doing on the front page of, in our case, the Raleigh News and Observer. And, that stuff doesn't happen, and I don't say that to be, like, completely paranoid, but, we're incredibly privileged as physicians, and, we are, there's a huge amount of public trust, and, we're also human. But we have to kind of regulate in a way, and I think it just can save you a lot of heartache if you are just at an early time in your life really sort of think that all this electronic communication, whether it's social media, email, text, or whatever, is forever. And I think you just have to be really kind of cautious and professional in general.
Yeah, you're absolutely.
I just want to comment on the retweet does not equal endorse thing. I think it is by far the most nonsensical thing I've ever heard in my life. So if you were telling me you saw someone retweet a tweet that said, I like ice cream, they don't like ice cream, is that the assumption that I don't?
It sounds like you endorsed it, yeah.
You're endorsing that you like ice cream.
Yeah.
So like this kind of statement is completely nonsense. You're not protecting yourself from anything, because guess what? Like you retweet something, no one's taking a screenshot of your profile saying like, oh, well, he's safe now. Like retweet didn't mean he endorsed it. It's just nonsense. That doesn't protect you from anything. If you don't agree with something, retweet and comment and say or make a statement, but don't just that's not going to protect you. It's a nonsense statement. Just don't. I don't have it. I don't think it does anything. That's just my personal opinion.
No, I appreciate it. I wanted to transition because the time is moving so fast. Dr. Dewin, you are actually a part of a group that published a paper about Twitter's footprint of urology applicants and how potentially that affects match outcomes, suggesting that those with an increased Twitter presence fared better in regards to matching. And I just wanted to see if you could talk a little bit about that, and I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, so it's very interesting because it's kind of controversial, obviously, and I understand why it would be controversial. But I think if you take out all the data and you just think in terms of just general understanding of how the world works, it kind of makes sense. When we surveyed program directors, they said, although by far, 95% don't have any formal evaluation of social media. About 10% said that they saw something on social media that either improved someone's interest, their interest in someone, or 10% also said that they got less interested in someone by their activity online. And that kind of makes sense. We all have inherent biases. So you can use it as an inherent bias to help you potentially or harm you. And I think that everyone being human, that makes sense. Is it fair though? I don't know. And I do think that if by having that data and putting that data out, at least I think it's important that we let med students and program directors and attendings be aware of those biases, and if you can take advantage of that as a med student, I would say that's a good thing, or be aware of it to protect yourself. So that's where I kind of stand on it. I think there's other concerns. Is it putting too much pressure on med students to be active on these forums? Is it putting too much pressure on program directors, on other attendings to be active during the application process? Potentially, in that what we already have too much burnout. So is it making med students more burned out? Is it making more attendings and programs directors burned out? It's like a cyclical thing, but I think it's important to at least be aware of it, and we can do with that information what we want.
Yeah. Do you guys, anyone else have anything to add to that, the idea of Twitter activity increasing?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I consider myself someone who definitely is engaged on social media, but I don't make it a priority to kind of have more followers. But even with my modest footprint, there have been a lot of opportunities that have been given to me as a result of that engagement. And there's been a lot of collaborations that have come by as a result of that. So when people are starting their practice or people are in residency, I do think it is a great way to engage. You have to be authentic about it. If it's not something you're interested in and you're not really going to do it in a way that you really like kind of show yourself to other people as far as like what your values are and what your quote unquote brand is, I don't know that it will be effective. So it's all about checking in with yourself and what your bandwidth is to do it, and what you want to get out of it. And there are different ways to have social media. You can have social media for your practice and post educational videos for patients. You can decide that you're going to have a platform for your academic work if that's what you want to do. It can be just a place to socialize and share urology memes, whatever it is that you want to do, but you have to really understand it's just like doing any kind of scientific project. You have to have a goal in mind that you want to accomplish, and then kind of set out to do that and give it the time that you want to give it. But I think it even in the modest sense, it is incredibly beneficial as a networking platform.
Yeah, absolutely. We have about 3 minutes left, and I do have a couple questions that I could ask, but I wanted to open up for questions for our panel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kieran. I was sort of going to the dark side of social media, or not necessarily dark, but basically medfluencers, med Twitter, TikTok docs, that kind of thing. I know that sort of how you can choose how you engage in social media, but those people reflect on us as a profession, or maybe they're doing the right thing. And I don't know if you guys dance online or in the OR, but when I think of social media, we just had that finance lecture. We talk about like high risk, high reward, and I feel like it's so easy to get canceled for doing the wrong thing nowadays. I almost wonder, should we not be doing it at all? But then, if you do the right dance and the next day you're on Ellen and now you've, blasted your, your reach. So what's your guys' take on that, basically?
So I have mixed feelings about the med influencers. I guess from a pediatric perspective, there's so much misinformation about pediatric health. And I'm sure there's the same in adult, but at least in adult, there's some fairly reliable places you can go. And there's just, these parent groups are just trading in constant misinformation. And I think that for me, even if it's a silly dance or something little, it is this opportunity to show physicians as friendly, approachable resources to ask questions. Because I think that that's the only way we're going to be able to fight the just vast amounts of misinformation that are out there that are being shared in forums that we aren't seeing, in these private Facebook groups, in, the Instagram things that people are sending to each other. These things are all happening constantly. And unless we're in that sphere, participating, joining in whatever way we can, our voices are lost and the vacuum is filled. Okay, and it's being filled by people who aren't us. And so I think however people want to engage is better than not engaging, as long as they do it safely and thoughtfully and truthfully. But I think it is worth engaging because in many ways we've lost that conversation to people without any education without a goal for truthfulness.
Thank you. This forum has been, this panel rather, has been really, really phenomenal. I have a question about something that I personally struggle with. I'm very passionate about advocacy for my patients, my profession, and especially in these times, a lot of stuff happening politically may evoke strong feelings, either within myself or things I see on Twitter. And Dr. Santiago-Lastra, you kind of touched upon this when you talked about setting boundaries and creating your identity, but I was wondering if you all could just share a little bit about your thought process when you decide to either publicly post something or retweet something or like something, because I do think it's important to take a stand, but at the same time, sometimes I find myself thinking, where's the line?
That's an excellent question, and so I have checked in with myself about that, and so I know that on my platform, I stand for equity, I stand for justice. I want to advocate for my patients, and I want to advocate for better representation in urology. And absolutely, if that involves making a post about something that's happened politically, you can bet that I'm going to post about it. And I'm going to express my opinion. I do think that it is dangerous to say, physicians should not be political, because medicine and healthcare are political. The healthcare system is one of the biggest political issues that we are facing currently. And so it is important to be involved. You have to be careful and make sure that you can be political, but you have to be careful about being partisan. And so you want to be critical of things that you think are not just or things that affect the profession, but you have to be open to having to hear the other argument, and sometimes the other argument is nasty and ugly. And you also have to make sure that you are prepared to defend your position with facts. And so if that is what you stand for and what you choose to advocate for, I think definitely we need people to advocate for those things, because as Dr. Rowe says, if you do not do it, somebody else with perhaps less information is certainly going to do it.
Woody Smelser, Vanderbilt, thank you to all of you for all these insights. Many of us mentor trainees that are a stage behind us or 2 stages behind us. In Dr. Kane's talk, he kind of gave a checklist for now earlier. So we just go down the panel and tell, if you have, because Dr. Dubin's paper obviously showed that in the majority of cases, having a social media presence favors applicants, favors people pursuing fellowships, et cetera. So what's your checklist for now for the people that you each individually mentor as far as engaging in social media moving forward professionally?
So the question is, what are things that you should be doing on? What's the basic minimum? I think really the key to it is, first off, if you want to do it and make it fun and make it interesting for yourself, because if it becomes a chore, I think it comes kind of across in the process. So I think one of the keys that I think is, if you're doing some kind of work, you're doing some kind of something, research, non-OR stuff, make sure to publicize it. That's what it's there for. We already know your citations go up if you tweet things about your work. So you're benefiting yourself. You're really putting yourself out there. That's one. Two, I mean, everyone's different. I like to have you share stuff in your personal life. If you're going on a hike and you're like, I like to talk about movies or pizza or stuff like that. So I think that just gives you a little bit more depth as a person and makes you more relatable. And I think people like to see that. And then I think also just whoever you're targeting, whether it's for networking or whatever your goal is, kind of just take notice of them as well and see what their interests are. And it's okay to engage. You can, if you're uncomfortable by reaching out at first, you can like for a little bit. Believe it or not, I notice who's liking my post. I'm sure you guys notice, and it's just oh yeah, I've seen that person, or I'm interested. Who is that person? People will look. So you can take it stepwise. You don't have to be insanely aggressive at first. You can ease into it at the best of your ability, and I think just have fun with it. Follow non-medicine people. I think that's something I really like, because you can also get really interesting information on the world, whatever you're interested in, and you can find really other interesting communities outside of medicine, and you can bring that level of your personality into the urology Twitterverse. And I think kind of a combination of that. You want to be personable, personal, and engaging.
Yeah, we'll have this last question, Ezra, please.
Hi, Ezra Margolin from Columbia. Thank you to Miad and all the panelists. You're fantastic. My question is sort of going off from Dr. Dubin's paper on engaging in the match process and social media and the match. Could you talk a little bit about how we should be engaging with residency applicants, especially in the context of guidelines on post-interview contact and how social media fits into that space?
Yeah, so there was a commentary on the paper that we published of saying basically we should just ban all social media. We responded saying, that's obviously impossible. It's a great point though, especially at things like AUA today, right? Like a lot of applicants here, you're meeting them, they want to meet you, they want you to introduce them to the program director or the chairman, and my experience is, at Northwestern, I have I keep knocking this over, I'm sorry. I have a couple med students here, and I tell them, if you want, make a Twitter account. I'm happy to help you. I think you can help them do this kind of stuff. I personally think that during this whole application process, I tell them to be as active as possible. I think this concept of, no communication after interviews is pretty impossible to police. It was pretty impossible beforehand, probably with just emails. How was anyone going to really know that someone's emailing or texting someone? And now with the internet, it was going to be impossible either way. You in your own personal value system should know the rules and you take it accordingly. But I don't think it's inappropriate for a program like that was already following an applicant or an applicant that was already following a program to not like or reply or retweet if it's like a research thing. We're all a community, and I think the whole concept of community is supporting each other. And I don't think that that's breaking any barriers here or any rules. Obviously, if someone's messaging you and saying, hey, am I coming here? That's inappropriate. But I think continue to use your common sense in the way that we've been using it for the other ways we have. But to just say no one should be communicating, I think that's kind of not fair to everyone, and it's not realistic, truthfully.
All right, just probably one of the last questions, probably the most important, is how can I personally increase my followers? I am not that popular. No, but I just want to say thank you to everyone on the panel. Please, let's just give them a round of applause.
This has been an AUA Inside Tract podcast brought to you by the Residents and Fellows Committee. Check out the AUA University podcast for weekly episodes on the latest clinical updates and advances in urology. For more information about the AUA and membership, visit auanet.org.